Hello and a very good morning right here to all our viewers on News9 Live. This is the show on which over the next 30 minutes you'll see all the top stories from around the world which are making headlines, and not just headlines. In fact, these are the stories that'll make you decide where to invest your money, how to read the markets, how to read the economy, and of course all the specials coming in all the way from Davos at the World Economic Forum. I'm Karthik Malhotra and you're watching World Business Report. Well, this is World Business Report, and let's start with our top story we're following this morning. Well, after India expelled Canadian diplomats last year following tensions between the two countries, the number of study permits for Indian students in Canada is not expected to recover soon. According to Canadian Immigration Minister Marc, Canada's relationship with India has halved its ability to process a lot of applications from India, and that the Canadian government is planning to introduce measures in the first half of this year to reduce the influx of international students. The dispute was triggered by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's claim in June of evidence linking Indian government agents to the killing of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in British Columbia. And moving to the border of Canada, in fact, and the largest economy in the world, which goes in for the election in November this year, Donald Trump and his Republican opponents kicked off a week of campaigning in New Hampshire on Tuesday ahead of the state's nominating contest, with the ex-president's competitors battling to slow his march to the party's White House nomination. Less than 24 hours after ending his White House bid and endorsing Trump, Vivek Ramaswami appeared alongside Trump at an evening rally, giving the former president his full-throttle support. Remember, more than half of Iowa voters backed Trump, propelling him toward a potentially close and acrimonious rematch against Democratic President Joe Biden in the campaign for November's presidential elections. Take a look.
I'm thrilled to be back with the people of the great state of New Hampshire, with thousands of proud, hardworking American patriots, which is what you are. As you know, last night we had a record-setting evening in Iowa. What a great place that is, too. The largest margin of victory in GOP history. Is that good? Is that good? And the previous record, as you know, was 12 points, so we beat it by more than 30 points, so that was really something. So he has a big, beautiful, bright future ahead. Vivek Ramaswamy. Come on up, Vivek. We're going to make this happen, and you guys know this well. You know this man. You know why we're here. Patriots across the state. We are in the middle of a war in this country. That's what this is. It's not a war between black and white. It's not between Democrat and Republican, even in a deeper sense. It's between the permanent state and the everyday citizen. Between those of us who love the United States of America and a fringe minority who hates this country and what we stand for. That's what it means. We've been celebrating our diversity and our differences for so long that we forgot all of the ways that we are the same as Americans, bound by that common set of ideals that set this country into motion. We believe those ideals still exist. This man is going to be your next president to revive them.
Well, making America great again is what it seems, and not alone, but with the support of Vivek Ramaswamy now, who was once competing against Donald Trump for the same presidential elections. But staying with U.S. elections, Florida governor and Republican presidential candidate Ron DeSantis shifted his focus to South Carolina on Tuesday after finishing second in the Iowa caucus. DeSantis spoke to South Carolina voters, driving home a message of core conservative values and an ability to keep promises at a campaign event in Greenville. DeSantis also attacked the South Carolina record of Nikki Haley, who served as the state's governor from 2011 to 2017. He also questioned Donald Trump's record as president and suggested his appeal to Republican voters may not endure. Here's a look.
And, you know, Nikki Haley said only the top two from Iowa, you know, go on to be viable. Well, guess what? We punched our ticket out of Iowa yesterday. So, you know, it's, I mean, I just think about, like Haley, look, she was governor here for 6 years. Can you name major achievements under her tenure? I mean, tell me if there are, because she hasn't been able to do it. What I'm telling you on these things, whether it's the border, whether it's crime, whether it's the budget, all this stuff, I'm not just saying that idly. I intend to follow through. I intend to do it. And that's important because, you know, Donald Trump ran in 2016 on building the wall, having Mexico pay for it. You obviously didn't do that. Draining the swamp. You know, didn't do that, holding Hillary accountable, eliminating the debt. They added a lot of debt and whatnot. For veterans' mental health, but also for so many of these other things. All right, thank you all. God bless. It was both of us. Now, Donald Trump obviously, won a good victory, but half the people wanted somebody else. I mean, so for somebody that's the most famous person in America, or one of them, basically running as an incumbent, to get about half. That does show that there's an interest in going in with me a direction that we are going to be faithful to all these conservative principles and the America First policies that people in South Carolina want to see. So this is a great state for us. We haven't spent a lot of money here yet. We're going to start to let us be known a little bit more. But from my military background to my conservative record and leadership, this is a great constituencies here for us, and so we're going to work really hard at it.
Well, the race to the White House really gathering momentum, and not just in U.S., even beyond U.S. and the borders of U.S. In fact, French President Emmanuel Macron said that he would deal with whoever wins the U.S. polls a day after former President Donald Trump secured a resounding victory in the first 2024 Republican presidential contest in Iowa. Take a look.
I've always had the same philosophy. I take the leaders that people give me, and I commit to France's service and to its interest, to dialogue with whomever. I did it with President Trump during his whole term, his first term, and we achieved results. We could do important things together.
Nous avons eu des résultats. Nous avons pu faire ensemble des choses importantes. Nous avons eu des échecs.
We had failures, climate, some taxation policies, but generally speaking, I think we shouldn't focus on people. We should have the wisdom to see that the United States is an important ally, and we will honor their courage, and in particular their Normandy landings this coming June. They share our values. But it's a democracy that's going through a crisis in which its first priority is itself, and the second priority is the China question. All of us Europeans need to be lucid about that.
Et donc nous devons tous Européens être lucides sur cela.
All right, French President Emmanuel Macron there saying that he will and his government will work with whoever comes to power in the U.S. elections. Well, shifting focus to the World Economic Forum in Davos now, and specifically on China. Well, speaking at the annual meeting, China's Premier Li Qiang said that the Chinese economy had rebounded and moved upward and was estimated to have grown around 5.2% in 2023, above the official target of around 5%. He further said that the Chinese economy was open for business and highlighted its potential for foreign investment as its vast population becomes rapidly more urban and its middle class is forecast to grow. Li added that China, with a rapidly unbalancing population of 1.4 billion people, would play an important role in boosting aggregate global demand. Take a look. In fact, speaking at the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos, and data which has also come in from the Ministry of Statistics in China revealing that 5.2% is the growth rate that the Chinese economy has ticked in the year 2023. Is that good enough, coming on the low base of around 3% for the year 2022 is something that economists from around the world will have to weigh in on. But a low base effect and a growth rate of only 5.2% compared with India's projected growth rate for FY24 at 7.3%. No surprises there for the world to guess who the boss is. And sticking with the World Economic Forum and speaking at the event in Davos, Microsoft chief Satya Nadella said that artificial intelligence may have given new tools to science, but the most interesting thing to watch out for will be what it can do to accelerate science. He also dismissed concerns that AI cannot be governed or regulated. He further said that artificial intelligence has been gaining a lot of scale recently with the advent of ChatGPT and many other platforms. And time for a quick programming note right here on News 9 Live. Monday, 22nd of Jan is the date that you would obviously be glued to. And where to be glued to? Of course, your platform is News 9 Live as we bring you live action from the Ram Temple inauguration in Ayodhya. Take a look.
Ram's Ayodhya rebuilt. Ram Lala's Pran Pratishtha. Countdown to January 22nd. Dateline Ayodhya. Catch the mega coverage only on News 9 Live.
Dateline Ayodhya, all eyes will be glued to TV sets on the 22nd of Jan. Well, back to some global news right here on World Economic Forum. And staying with the World Economic Forum, European Union's Ursula von der Leyen warns West against lacking support for Ukraine. Speaking to business leaders at the annual meeting in Davos, Ursula von der Leyen said that Ukrainians need predictable financing throughout 2024 and beyond, and that they need a sufficient and sustained supply of weapons to defend Ukraine and regain its rightful territory. Take a listen in.
Of course, like in all democracies, our freedom comes with risks. There will always be those who try to exploit our openness, both from inside and out. There will always be attempts to push us off track, for example, with disinformation and misinformation. And nowhere has there been more of that than on the issue of Ukraine. So let me provide you with some real information. Russia is failing on strategic goals. It is first and foremost a military failure to fight threats like climate change or industrial scale. Russia's failure is also economic. Sanctions have decoupled its economy from modern technology and innovation. Russia is now dependent on China. And finally, Russia's failure is also diplomatic. And all of this tells us that Ukraine can prevail in this war. But we must continue to empower their resistance. Ukrainians need predictable financing throughout 2024 and beyond. They need a sustained supply of weapons to defend Ukraine and regain its rightful territory. They need capabilities to deter future attacks by Russia. And this is why I believe strengthening our democracy and protecting it from the risks and interference it faces is our common and enduring duty. We need to build trust more than ever, and Europe is prepared to play a key role.
Building trust and Europe to play a keen role is the word coming in for Ursula von der Leyen. Well, staying with Ukraine, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urged the West in a speech in Davos on Tuesday to show a united front against Russian President Vladimir Putin and to step up its support for Kyiv to ensure that Moscow did not prevail in the war. Take a look.
Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky used his platform at the World Economic Forum on Tuesday to urge the West to unite to stop Russia's invasion and the man behind it.
In fact, Putin embodies war. We all know that he is the sole reason why various wars and conflicts persist and why all attempts to restore peace have failed, and he will not change. He will not change. We must change.
Zelensky told the gathering that Western hesitation in its backing of Kiev and fears of an escalation in the war were costing time and could prolong fighting by years. Nearly 2 years after Russia launched its full-scale invasion, Zelensky strongly opposed freezing the conflict along its current lines.
If anyone thinks this is only about us, this is only about Ukraine, they are fundamentally mistaken. Possible directions and even timeline of a new Russian aggression beyond Ukraine become more and more obvious.
Great to see you.
Zelensky was a man in demand in Davos in a day full of meetings. At the top of his agenda, trying to secure Western assistance that is held up by political wrangling in both the US Congress and Brussels. The Ukrainian leader sat down with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and other senior US officials and emerged from a sit-down with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in good spirits.
President Zelensky, how did the meeting go, sir?
Very good.
After his speech, Zelensky revealed he had received positive signals about unlocking financial support from the European Union and that he hoped the US would approve further aid within weeks. The forum comes as Kiev's troops are on the defensive footing after a major counter-offensive last year failed to break Russian defensive lines in Ukraine's occupied south and east. Ukraine is now focusing on reforming its conscription effort to replenish manpower and addressing artillery shortages at the front.
All right, let's move on from one war to another. Well, Iranian advanced conventional weapons bound for Yemen's Houthis were seized by U.S. Central Command on Tuesday. It was the first seizure of lethal Iranian-supplied advanced conventional weapons to the Houthis since Houthi attacks against merchant ships began in November. All right, and if the conflict, the real official wars are not enough. There was, of course, a war mid-air as well. After a mid-air blowout of a cabin panel in Alaska Airlines MAX 9 earlier this month, Boeing will add further quality inspections for the 737 MAX. The actions come after the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, extended a grounding of MAX 9 aircraft. Alaska Airlines welcomed the steps taken by the company. Here's that package.
Boeing is adding extra quality control checks on its 737 MAX jets. That's following the mid-air panel blowout on a MAX 9 model operated by Alaska Airlines earlier this month. No one was seriously hurt in the incident, but it raised new concerns over how well the planes are made. MAX jets were previously grounded following 2 fatal crashes that were traced to a design flaw. On Monday, Boeing said it would deploy a team to Spirit Aerosystems, which makes the fuselage part that blew off. The team will also inspect other points in the manufacturing process. Customer airlines will be allowed access to conduct their own inspections. The actions come after the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration extended a grounding of MAX 9 aircraft. 171 of them will now be out of service until further notice. The FAA says it will make a decision after 40 of them have been thoroughly inspected. Earlier, the regulator said it could bring in an outside body to take over some inspection responsibilities that were previously assigned to Boeing. Alaska Airlines welcomed the steps taken by the company. There was no comment from other carriers, including United, which have seen jets grounded.
Well, that's Boeing there conducting more checks and balances to ensure that there's no repeat of the blowout of the door plug. Well, staying with the aviation sector, a federal judge on Tuesday sided with the Biden administration and blocked JetBlue Airways from buying its competitor Spirit Airlines, saying the $3.8 billion deal would reduce competition. U.S. District Judge who presided over a non-jury trial last year said that the government had proven that the merger would substantially lessen competition and violate a century-old antitrust law. Here's that story.
A federal judge on Tuesday blocked JetBlue's planned $3.8 billion takeover of Spirit Airlines, agreeing with the U.S. Department of Justice that the combination would hurt consumers. The ruling marked a victory for the Biden administration in its efforts to preserve competition among the lowest-cost airlines to ensure that air travel remains affordable. The judge wrote that the proposed merger, quote, does violence to the core principles of antitrust law to protect the United States' markets and its market participants from anti-competitive harm. Spirit shares tumbled 60%, while JetBlue shares fell 5% after the judge's decision. The companies could still appeal the ruling. JetBlue said it disagreed with the judge's ruling and is considering next steps. The Justice Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment.
In short, if not blocked, the merger of JetBlue and Spirit would result in higher fares and fewer choices for tens of millions of travelers across the country.
U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, along with 6 Democratic state attorneys general and the District of Columbia, had argued the deal would lead to fewer flights and higher prices for millions of Americans. JetBlue's lawyers argued that the case was a, quote, misguided challenge to a merger between the nation's 6th and 7th largest airlines, which combined control less than 8% of a domestic market dominated by 4 larger carriers. United, American, Delta, and Southwest Airlines control 80% of the market, following a series of previous mergers that the federal government approved.
Well, we're running out of time right here on World Business Report, but to end, let's leave you with all the updates on Wall Street. Thanks for watching.
U.S. stocks ended lower on Tuesday after mixed earnings from Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs pressured banks and as sell-offs in Boeing and Apple weighed on the S&P 500. The Dow dropped 0.6%, the S&P lost almost 0.4%, and the Nasdaq shed 0.2%. Shares of Morgan Stanley tumbled more than 4% to a more than 1-month low after it posted a lower quarterly profit, while shares of Goldman Sachs ticked higher after it reported a 51% rise in profit. Apple dropped more than 1% after offering rare discounts on its phones in China in response to stiff competition there. The move comes days after being overtaken by Microsoft as the world's most valuable firm. Eric Ditton, president and managing director of the Wealth Alliance, thinks shares of the tech giant, along with others in the so-called Magnificent Seven, will not sustain the outsized gains they made last year.
Apple's had 4 consecutive quarters of declining revenue, just cut prices 5% on the iPhone in China. So there's questions, and they're still trading in high PE levels. High 20s, and they're not growing nearly as fast. Great company, but what's it worth?
In other company news, Spirit Airlines slumped 47% after a federal judge blocked JetBlue's planned $3.8 billion acquisition of the ultra-low-cost carrier, agreeing with the U.S. Department of Justice the deal would hurt consumers. Boeing slumped almost 8% to a 2-month low after the Federal Aviation Administration extended the grounding of its 737 MAX 9 airplanes indefinitely, and Wells Fargo downgraded the stock to equal weight from overweight. And Advanced Micro Devices jumped more than 8% after Barclays analysts raised their price targets for AMD and several other chip makers, saying they would benefit from growth in artificial intelligence. Larger rival NVIDIA climbed about 3% and hit a record high.